The Gospel of John is today's Gospel, chapter 10, from where our text comes today. The Gospel of John is probably the most important Gospel of the four Gospels for us as the church today. For many and most of our theology comes from the Gospel of John. And if you read it, and if we read it together, you know and you will understand where or how it all connects. Today's chapter 10, verses 11 through 18, is a very popular story of Jesus talking about being the Good Shepherd. I am the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. Sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because the hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the Good Shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up. I have received this command from my Father. The word of the Lord. And this text, in this chapter, it's not isolated. It's not a chapter that kind of has its own context. It seems that it is a continuation of a conversation that happened or that started in the previous chapter. In John chapter 9 is the famous story of the blind man who Jesus healed, who was being confronted by the Pharisees, and he finally says, I don't know who he is or what he is. What I know is that I once was blind, but now I see. And that is one of the greatest testimonies ever recorded, I would say, in history, because it didn't matter all that was going on or who or what was happening. What he knew was that he was blind, but now he was no longer blind. And this conversation seems to be continuing from that chapter when Jesus, after the blind man who was healed, is kicked out of the synagogue and thrown out because he respected and understood that Jesus had more power enough to heal him who was blind from birth. He sees beyond just the religion, and Jesus is talking with him and talks about blindness being worse when it is chosen blindness. When you choose not to see that which is around you, when you choose not to look at what's around you and to recognize what's happening, that is worse than a person who is born blind. So that conversation continues and leads into Jesus talking about being the Good Shepherd. I am the Good Shepherd because I lay down my life. And for those of us reading it now, we read that and understand already that Jesus will die on the cross because we know the end of that story already. The end doesn't end on the cross. It ends when he resurrects from the death on the cross. We know that already, but for those in that time and place, Jesus speaking about giving up his life, what does that mean to them? Is it just mean that he's willing to? So they're like, wow, he's great. He's a cool guy. He's willing to give it all up. Does it mean that he really is a good shepherd because he's going to lead by example? What does it mean for those who were there at that time? I can't answer that. I wasn't there. But it's always something that I consider and I contemplate. When you read this, we read it with hindsight, knowing the end of the story already. But when they heard this, they heard it without knowing what was going to happen next. Did you ever think about that? I always think about things like this and wonder, What did it sound like when Jesus said these things? How would you react to someone saying something like this? They know he's a good shepherd because they hear what he says and they see what he does, and they've experienced the miracles. The miracle of being fed by 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. The miracle of him healing people. They've seen it. They've witnessed it. So they understand that he is being a good shepherd. But being a good shepherd doesn't mean that you always have good sheep. And this is where I struggled. When I was wrestling with this text, I was struggling because just for me personally, I've been struggling trying to bring it all together. You know, we believe in a good God, yet bad things happen, and that's reality. It's not always easy to explain away. And you know what? It's okay. You don't have to explain it away. It's something that you need to work through. It's something to help you mature. It's something that helps your spiritual life and your emotional life and your physical life all come together and grow closer to God because you struggled with what's going on. Trying to understand some of the situations in the world, trying to see how do you make sense of some of the things that we've seen and heard of, the violence. How do we treat each other the way we treat each other? How do we do the things that we do to each other? How do we do that as humans? How do we ignore those who are in need and are able to just keep feeding our greed? How do we do that? How do we allow those without to continue to go without? And allow those who have so much to continue to grow their prosperity? How do we do that? How do we live in a world that injustice seems to reign? It's difficult. It's difficult questions that we need to deal with. Because the first question that happens, or the first thing that pops up is, well, how can a good God allow these bad things to happen? And this is a context and a depth that goes way beyond one sermon. So it's just a thought. Let's think about and work together and work through how do we see this? Jesus, the good shepherd, I would say the best shepherd. How do these things happen to us who we call ourselves part of his flock? So not even looking outside, looking at those who are within the flock. How do bad things happen? And as I was wrestling with this, one of the things that kept coming to light was that we are made in the image of God. We make choices, good and bad. We live in a world that has fallen short. We live in a sinful world. And also, when we think about Jesus as the shepherd, we give him so much credit in the sense of like a shepherd can only do so much if the sheep aren't listening and doing what the shepherd is asking them and telling them to do. And just thinking about a flock of sheep, there are things that happen within. Sometimes a sheep will fall and hurt themselves. Sometimes the sheep will stumble and others will run it over because they're going towards the shepherd or they're running towards food and they'll hurt the other. Sometimes one gets lost. It just wanders away and gets lost. And things happen to it because it walked away, it wandered away. But that doesn't mean that the shepherd is not a good shepherd. Things happen because things happen. The shepherd continues to be a very good shepherd, guiding all of the sheep towards the goal, towards the food, towards the water, back to the pen, taking care of them. But yet stuff still happens. Is that the shepherd's fault? When we put our foot in it and make a choice that we shouldn't have made, we blame God for allowing this to happen. We blame the shepherd for allowing us to do this. But did God really have a choice in it? Most often we make the decision, and this is what I call the bless me here syndrome. We put ourselves in a situation and then we ask God to bless us there. when God never asked us or told us or encouraged us to go there. We put ourselves in situations and then say, why, God, why? Why am I here? But if you take a few steps back and follow your own choices, you'll see that you put yourself there. But yet, mercy and grace abound. And even though we may wander, even though we may fall and get hurt, even though we may make choices that we shouldn't have made, the Good Shepherd still comes along, picks us up, cleans us off, and brings us back into the flock, back into safety, back into where we need to go. Though so many things are going on, God's love still prevails. At the end of all of this, at the end of all that happens and that has happened and that will happen, the common thread through it all is that God's love continues in spite of, and sometimes because of, us. It's not always in the negative, but it seems that way though, doesn't it? Because we seem to be able to put our foot in it quite often. We wander off and get lost and then cry out to God, why? Why am I here? We allow sin to push its way into our life, and then instead of moving beyond it and leaving it to the side, we encourage it and allow it to grow within us. And then we blame God. But sometimes also our body fails us. And we cry out, why, God, why? Blaming God for the difficulties that we're going through. Sometimes life is just difficult. It's the price we pay for living in this sinful nature. I'm not making any excuses for God. I'm not making any excuses for you to say and to do whatever you want. What I'm saying is that in this world, you shall have afflictions. Jesus says that in the Gospel of John. But I have overcome the world. In this world, we will have difficulties. In this world, we will have things go wrong. In this world, we may wander off and then wonder, where's the shepherd? I thought he was supposed to be the good shepherd. Where is he? Why am I alone? Why? Why? Why is the endless question that can go on and on and on and on. But yet, the Good Shepherd comes to our rescue, seeks us out. Even though we are the ones who wandered, even though we are the ones who tripped, even though we are the ones who made the choices that we made, the Good Shepherd comes to us, picks us up, cleans us off, and brings us back into the fold. The Good Shepherd continues to shepherd them, no matter what's going on, no matter where we put ourselves. And that's an encouragement, because sometimes we wander into places that we don't know how we got there. And sometimes we wander into places that we wanted to go, but didn't want anyone else to know. But yet, the shepherd continues to shepherd us, to encourage us, to walk with us, to go get us when we wandered and fallen. The Good Shepherd comes after us. But now, what does this mean for us? How do we do better? How do we make better choices? And if we've stumbled, how do we get back up again? If the shepherd is by our side or seeking us out when he can't see us, let us try to stand, for the shepherd will find us. When you feel lost and alone and abandoned, don't you worry, the shepherd is coming for you, if he's not there already. When you're feeling like all hope is lost, The shepherd is always seeking the sheep that have gone astray. When you've been in the fold and you've fallen within, the shepherd sees you and lifts you up and cleans you off again to help you become or continue to be part of the flock. We are the sheep that God has called. Not mindless drones, not people who just do as they're told, but people who are seeking to grow closer in relationship with God. And the Good Shepherd is here with us and for us and calling to us. But now it is up to us. Are we willing to respond to the Good Shepherd? Are we willing to respond to the shepherd that calls us, that seeks us, that lifts us up? Are we willing to respond? Today's call is, are you willing to respond to God? The call is out. Are you willing to respond to the Good Shepherd that calls to you, that seeks you, that wants to grow in relationship with you, that wants to lift you up from the loneliness and the abandonment that you feel? Are you willing to give yourself over to the Good Shepherd? Are you willing to give it all up, to stop wandering and stop worrying about things that need not be, and start focusing on that which is of the utmost importance? On the shepherd that calls, the shepherd that guides, the shepherd that protects, and the shepherd that encourages. Our hope is in the Good Shepherd. Are you willing to respond to that call? Now let